we're continuing on, and we're saying that I think this is the first time we've come across a zarka, at least in our class. Zarka always comes at the end of a word, so it's going to focus us on the finality of something. And as we noted in the introduction, it talks about pain or struggle of something to try to come to a conclusion. So, Vayarach ad Hashem, God with the Zarka, so it's going to talk to us about the end of things. And when unfortunately someone passes away, we thank God as Baruch Dayan Emet, the judge of the final reality, Emet, from Aleph, from the beginning, to Mem, to the middle, to the Tav, to the end. Emet has everything in it, the beginning, the middle, and the end. Truth is ultimately the understanding of the entire purpose of something. So when you understand the entire purpose, of course you're going to be at the end of something. So a Zarka, which goes at the end, is going to tell us that God is going to understand the truth of the beginning, the middle, and the end of something that's gone on. And number two, we read, although the devotion of the species was highly appreciated by God, their pain and physical death sparked his attitude, as shown by the shape and placement of the reading mark. So Zarka, which always comes at the end, means that God understood that the ultimate purpose of these animals was to give sanctification, was to make the realization in the world from this point on be that the world is there by God's grace and by God's grace alone, and therefore having animals come to the purpose of demonstrating that is a fitting end, and God, who understands their ultimate purpose, can appreciate the fact that animals being sacrificed truly do meet this purpose. Et reach, with a munach, so this is going to separate itself out slightly from what's gone before and focuses forwards onto what's going to go on, with aroma from the burning bodies, mixed reflections aroused in the thoughts of God as stressed by the shape of the reading mark. So this is going to separate it out slightly from Hashem, and it's going to move forward. So when man dabbles in things that are eternal, there's always the question of the purity of his intentions. Is he doing it in some reason for his own aggrandizement? Is he doing it for the ultimate purpose? And because Noach is the one who's giving the sacrifice, and because the animals are coming forward willingly for this, God has to question that slightly. But ultimately it moves forward and is accepted. Hanichoach, with a segol. And again, this is the first time we've come across a segol in our Perush, I believe. Segol finishes off the struggle that we started with the Zarka, with an ultimate idea of balance or completion. So the word segula is something where we have achieved grace, where we have achieved what we finally can maximally be. So we have the ability to give this ultimately stability for a higher purpose. It takes the struggle that we went through in the Zarka, and it says we completed with God's favor. We completed at the point where we're always looking forwards where we're always looking upwards in perfect stability. So, segol, this is the word nichoach. He's taking it from the root of nach, of being restful or peaceful. At the end of it effected an attitude of the pacifism, so from nach, nichoach, which God applied to further events regarding the harmonious coexistence of all creatures, as denoted by the shape and placement of the reading mark. And again, segol also comes at the end. It tells us that finally, in finality, after we've reached the struggle, we reach this harmonious place, which is the segol. And there's a pause after. If you've reached nirvana, if you're at the best place, of course there's going to be a little pause after that. Vayomer Kadma. So when we have a note that looks like Pashta, but it's followed by its mirror opposite with an Azla, then it gets a different name. It's called Kadma. It's a Pashta that's leading directly into what's going to go after it, so it's going to focus on the word itself, but sweep us forward into what's going to go on. And he thought or said, number 5, God was influenced by his recent inclination, and he thought of modifying his previous attitude of judgment to kindness and mercy, as suggested by the directional shape of the reading mark. So the thought is going to slightly be affected by what's going on, but mostly sweep us forward into what's we're going to go, what's going to come. Hashem, number 6, with an azla. This is what's going to complete in an elevated way what we had done with the previous note. On this basis, God decided to make a new start for a future world, as he did at the original creation. The new world will be prone to survive and develop, as expressed by the shape of the directional reading mark. So it's going to close the loop with the thought, and it's going to be a new beginning because it's looking back to Bereshit from before, as well as to the Kadma. And we're going to pause after that. So Kadma v'Azla, pause. We're going to realize that God's thought is going to be something that is separated out as this new beginning. It's going to stand on its own, the concept of his thought. El libo with a revi'i. So this again is going to stand by itself, and it's going to emphasize the concept here to his mind. And normally we translate lave as heart, not mind. But you have to realize that lave is a concept of desire of action, desire of what you're going to do. So in that essence, it becomes mind, not heart. Did we get that concept, or do I need to explain it a little more?
Can you say that again?
Yep.
So, lave is not pure desire. It is desire to form an action. It is intention. It is something that is not quite complete. You're going to do something, but you haven't actually done it yet. So it is what you are planning on doing. After between Pesach and Shavuos, we count the Omer, and we celebrate on Lag BaOmer. Why do we celebrate on 33? Because 32 Lev is intention without necessarily having done anything yet. It's a plan, but it hasn't come to any fruition yet. When we get to 33, when we get beyond Lev, you've already established something. So that is why there's celebrations on Lag BaOmer. There's a lot of Kabbalistic stuff with Lamed Gimel, and we've already, if we're trying to inculcate things into our personality day after day after day during our counting of the Omer, everything up until 32 is things that we intend to do. Once we've said, I intend to do this, I intend to do that, I'm going to change this about myself, I'm going to change that about myself, at some point you've done so much planning that you've actually achieved something. So when we go beyond Lev, we get achievement. Lev is still potential. But Lev is intention to do. And when you intend to do something, that's not something that's necessarily instinctive. That's more planning. So that's why it gets the translation of mind, not heart. Because it's really not an emotional amount of planning. It's actually a rational type of planning. It's a desire to act, which is something that we would ascribe rational thought to, not emotional thought to.
So this is, sorry,
Yeah.
so I was just going to say, so with regard to our Segol on the Nichoa,
Yeah.
when we look back at the parishes, description of the Segol. It says Segol is a finishing region with a wide-ranged involvement.
So we're in the introduction page, LXVI, number 19.
Right.
Yep.
Segol is a finishing region with a wide-ranged involvement. He operates with a number of participants, the three dots, by balanced cooperation, and relies mainly on his chief Zarkah, who does the preliminary preparation.
So the Zarkah tells us of what we're struggling with.
Yeah.
We're struggling with the concept of, is sacrifice really something that is appropriate at this point? Is it something that could be acceptable at this point? Is it going to do something? Is it going to affect a change in the world? And the Segol tells us, yes. We're here. We're good. What we've achieved is acceptable. Is desirable. Is something that literally has segula. That it's going to be an omen for the future.
Yes. And what I was thinking of also is that in Segol you have a number of participants in balanced cooperation. And so therefore this has been a complete healing of Timalei Haaretz Hamas, when everything was nothing was cooperating, nothing was balanced, and nothing was pointed to the heavens. It was all pointed to self-indulgence. So here this Segol shows us the completion and the healing of the previous terrible situation and a beginning of the new situation, and we have a new creation, as it were, a new order in the world, because then it says Vayomer Hashem. In the creation, the original creation, the world in Genesis, it was Vayomer Elohim, as he was creating everything. Mm-hmm. And here Hashem recognizes, through the Zarkah, we see that Hashem recognizes the cooperation and the struggle that his creatures have had to go through, the fact that they're now working together, working in the correct directions, and Elohim has become Hashem, and the new order of the world.
So we've moved to the attribute of mercy.
Mercy. And then he will go on to say, Lo osef l'kalel od et ha'adama. And as you say, Vayomer Hashem el libo, this is his plan, his intention for the new world order. Lo osef l'kalel od et ha'adama.
So we're on number 7, el libo, to his mind with the Revi'i. The punishment of innocent victims and the cutting off of their generations came to his mind and entered the inside of the inside, as specified by the broad meaning of the reading mark. So Revi'i focuses us on the word and allows us to sort of contemplate on it and lets it stand alone. So we're sort of trying to say that this is something that comes to the core, to the essence of God's new plan, and it can stand alone. Lo osif, not, with a munach. So munach is going to separate us out from what's come before sharply and move forward to what's going to go afterwards. Therefore, God decided that he would not repeat a massive catastrophe affecting the total life of a vast area, as illustrated by the shape of the reading mark. So we're going to have a new existence. It's going to be different from the existence before. The laws of punishment and reward are going to be different. It's not going to be collective. It's going to be more focused, group by group, nation by nation. Or, well, we'll learn that later. But it's going to come in a different sense from what it came before.
What does inside of the inside refer to?
Again, this is a Kabbalistic concept. It is still a little beyond what I feel comfortable explaining. Mm-hmm. Suffice it to say, it is a level of God's perfection. osif, with a klisha gdola. Klisha gdola always sits at the beginning of the word and focuses us forward onto what's going to go on afterwards. And it is a melech. It's a note that, again, will have a slight pause after it, and it emphasizes the word. God established a new rule stating, "I will increase in advance my attitude of mercy to prevail over judgment in order to save more innocents even among the guilty," as conveyed by the shape and placement of the reading mark. So he's going to have the element of mercy be the first thing that is applied to anyone, versus having before the element of judgment being the first thing that's applied. So from here on in, the assumption is going to be that I'm going to try to help you, I'm going to be merciful, versus I'm going to apply the rules. Likalel with a pashta. So this is going to slightly emphasize the word and look forward to what's going to come after it. For cursing, number 10. I will consider the harm to the innocent while exposing guilty individuals for cursing, as demonstrated by the directional shape of the reading mark. So Parshat doesn't completely separate us out from what's going on. God is going to definitely apply mercy first, but if somebody truly is wrong, then he's still going to get punishment for it. So the kalel, the punishment is going to stand out. It's going to be there for those who are thoroughly and completely guilty. So you're not going to have mercy applied infinitely, except in the sense that we get the concept of Hashem Elokim. We get the concept of ultimately what God does as a punishment was in some way going to correct you and allow you an opportunity to recover from whatever you've done wrong. However, the kalel is still going to stand out. If you've done something wrong, you are going to get something bad that's going to happen to you. Od, with a mapach. Mapach is going to take what's come before and focus it to a sharp point to go afterwards. Again, number 11. Whenever there will again be a situation of punishment, a clear margin of discrimination will be observed to separate a victim from an offender, as depicted by the shape of the reading mark. So we're going to have l'kalel, we're going to curse that one who really did something wrong. Now we realize this is a world of consequence, that if somebody does something wrong, there will be others who will be minorly affected, or there are others who will be affected in some way by the fact that this happened, but they're not going to suffer the full brunt. It's going to be focused on the one who did the thing that's wrong, and the consequence will be narrowed out to that individual and won't be generalized, so that there won't be collective punishment of a generation or of all of humanity. It'll just be focused on the person who did the wrong. Et ha'adama, with the ground, with a pashta. So again, this is going to emphasize the thing and sweep it forward into what's going to come after it. Even those who dispose with the ground of vast territories, but silently react to crime as passive spectators, will also receive their punishment, like the active participants of the offenses, as signaled by the directional shape of the reading mark. So those people who are there and don't do something about it are going to have their own place of shame as well. It's going to be focused out and separated by that ma'apach, so it's not going to be the same thing that happened to that original person who did the sin with intent, but they are still going to get their something for not having stepped forward and done something about it. So the ground means those people who are incidentally affected. I suppose that's what he's trying to say here. So punishment before was collective, punishment now is going to be selective. And that od, that focusing lens is going to separate out the original perpetrators and their level of punishment from the, I won't say victims, I'll say the people who condoned, or the people who stood silently by, or the people who were not full participants. Ba'avur, for the sake, with a zakeh for the munach, so this is going to separate out sharply from what came before and move on to what comes afterwards. If those landowners fail to realize for their ground was rendered to them for sake of maintaining justice, failing to exercise their duties and react properly to crime, their lands will be revoked and their portion will be void, as emphasized by the shape of the reading mark. So, ba'avur, for the sake, is going to separate out those people who had some collusion with a crime, or some inability to react as strongly as they could have to something that had been done wrong, but their punishment will be proportional to their share of the blame, versus it's being collective, everybody sharing in the original sin that a smaller number of individuals might have done. Ha-adam, of the man, with a katon, so we know this is going to have sort of something of a double meaning to it. This is number 14. Just as each organ of the man serves the rest of the body, so is each man or nation obliged to serve others as a basis for mutual coexistence, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So we have two levels of punishment. The level of punishment that's going to be given to the original intentional perpetrator, and the level of punishment to those people who should have known better, who should have chided, who should have pointed it out, who should have done something but didn't actually do the crime themselves, and those people get a different level. So we have ha'adam with two levels of punishment, with a katan, which tells us that there's more than one depth to how divine justice is going to be meted out from this point on.
This is a very important comment from a Holocaust survivor.
I mean, he's commented before on his personal observations of that, and he didn't add anything here. But I think inside of him, certainly it is something that was inside of him. Because again, with a Plisha Gdolah always sits at the beginning of a word, even though it's a one-syllable word, so you can't really tell. Nonetheless, it emphasizes the word and it stands alone. It has a small pause after it. Because the guarding functions of conscience and justice are likely to fail in the prevention and deterrence of crime, God will also reassess passive perpetrators of iniquities as portrayed by the shape and placement of the reading mark. So this is something that's going to move us forward to what's going to go on, but it's going to stand alone by itself. So everybody has their own personal responsibility, and they've had that from the beginning. It is ingrained into them. They have the ability to decide what they're going to do, and ultimately that's going to lead them to their level of reward or punishment afterwards. So you're going to have to stand alone because of what you've been given to start. And we understand how that fits with Plisha Gdolah? Or do I need to say that again?
Can you say that again?
So Plisha Gdolah is a note that always is at the beginning of the word. So it's saying you're given something from the beginning, but it's going to point forward to the situation that's going to go on, but you're going to have to pause after it. So the level of punishment is going to depend on your initial condition, which is you're given a conscience, you're given the ability to act and to react to the level that you are capable, and you're going to be judged. The way that it's going to go forward from here is based on knowing what you had at the beginning and what you could have done and what you actually did. So you're going to have to stand with those original facts. You're going to be judged b'asher hu sham. You're going to be judged at the place where you are right now with all of your inputs to that point and how you should have reacted, and you're going to be judged against that. Yetzer, this is a Menach, a Yetiv, not a Yetiv, a Menach. So it's going to separate itself out from what has come before, and it's going to look forward to what's going to go on. Inclination, but a sharp separation from what's gone on before. It was proven that the inclination of people continued, whether they were punished for crimes or not, as manifested by the shape of the reading mark. So your inclination is going to be your starting point. You're going to be judged from exactly where you were at that moment. You've got everything that you've got, and you have to react from there on. So it's going to be, your judgment now is not going to be dependent on the way you would have been judged a year ago. Your judgment now is based on now. And that's why you have this munach, this sharp separation from who you were a year ago and 2 years ago and 20 years ago. And it's going to be from now and the way that you're going to go forward. So you understand what I mean by ba'asher hu sham? That's how Yishmael is judged. Yishmael is judged in that single moment when he did actually have good intention, and he was judged at that moment. Ba'asher hu sham, in exactly the place where he was, not based on who he was before or who he might become later. Although your decision is going to shape who you are later. It's going to separate you out from your past. This is what your inputs are, the key. And then ultimately you've got that moment of decision, and that's going to shape your future. So very deep philosophical thought just from Ki and Yetzer, just from those two notes and the way that they point us to the way that people act and are judged. Lev, with a dargah of mind, regardless of personal differences or locations of living, the function of mind operates in a similar direction, as assumed by the shape of the reading mark. So dargah is going to lead us forward into what's going to go on. It perhaps is going to tell us that something is going to go down from here, is going to get worse from here. So if your intention is poor, then your result is going to be poor. Ha'adam, with a tavir. So this is going to have some stabilizing element to it. Of the man, number 18. The specific characteristic of the man is actually a summary of outside influences meeting inborn stigmata. Therefore, the problem of absolute guilt is questionable, as pronounced by the shape of the reading mark. So we get into the concept of if you were put into a circumstance with all of your inputs, could you in fact have acted any differently? And the answer to that is you're given a moral inclination, your key. With that Klisha Gdolah, you're given the ability to overcome everything that you are put into. And we strongly believe that you're not put into a circumstance where you don't have the ability to overcome the hardship that you're given. However, you are also a victim somewhat of your circumstances. You're put into that dilemma, and you have to deal with it from there. So there is the sheltering idea of you have the ability to overcome, but also the fact that you're trapped in that circumstance. So the people of Israel go down to Egypt and become slaves. Well, God sent us there. But we had the ability to take that experience and turn it into something that makes us good, makes us great, makes us worthy. And we have to take our inputs and realize that we can rise to the highest level of what we've got inside of us.